Is going on, everybody? Welcome to NFL Live Before Lock Showdown Edition. We're talking Green Bay. We're talking Philadelphia. Smash that like button here as we get going. We're sponsored by DraftKings Pick 6, one of the best places you could possibly play at. If you sign up using promo code LP6, yes, LP6, you have an opportunity to get yourself $50 when you play just $5 or more on your first pick set over at Pick 6. So check them out here. We'll talk about them a little bit later, of course, but we got 45 minutes, turbocharged show, and wouldn't you know it, it's the first time in a long time that I get to see my good friend, my live before lock companion, Matt Gajewski. Matt, how you doing, my dude?
I'm doing okay. I'm excited that NFL is back. Number one priority in my life right now. So college football is probably number one, but NFL is close number two. Very excited for any sort of games. We got a banger tonight. How are you?
I'm doing well. I miss you. And obviously, I wish you were feeling better because, I like when my friends are happy and they are well taken care of. But get yourself some water, rehydration, because we got ourselves an hour and a half show coming up, you and me, leading us up to lock. And guess what, Matt? This is our fourth year of doing live before lock together. How insane is that?
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
2021, 22, 23, 24.
That is true. I'm getting old.
I'm getting older too.
We did shotgun the Four Loko in my old apartment.
Yes, you sure did.
That was a long time ago.
Did you also get rid of those crazy neighbors with the dog?
Yeah, no more. Well, I just moved this weekend, but I don't think my neighbors have a dog.
Okay, that's exciting. That's exciting. Fingers crossed. But I mean, if they have a dog like Duke, it's lovely, and you'd have a friend for life.
I've never met Duke, but Duke is very cute.
You're going to have to get out of here sometime. We can do that. I think we're also looking at potentially going to Scottsdale for the Bears-Arizona game beginning of November. There are talks. There are things in motion here potentially to get something like that going for the people. That'll be a fun showdown there I think it's Thursday night, or maybe it's a Sunday night. It's one of the two. But anyway, we're talking about Friday night in Brazil. We've got Friday night football, and it's not high school, which is wild because, again, that's usually the Friday night lights. But first off, how you feeling about I believe you're a fan, Green Bay Packers? And then how you feeling about Philadelphia? The outlook for both of these teams. I mean, we've got LaFleur, we got Sirianni. We've got two teams that I think, one, outperformed expectations, beating Dallas in the playoffs, going into San Francisco and being competitive in that first half. And the other one, coming off of a disaster into the season, but hopes are high for both this time around.
Yeah, both made some changes that you would think benefit them in the long term. Green Bay changes DCs. That was a long needed change for them to make. And Philly started off the year red hot on offense. They sputtered at the end of the season. They seemingly addressed those problems. And then on defense, they go out and they completely revamped their secondary. That's where they were getting carved up. So there should be a lot of optimism for these two teams. Amazing rosters on both sides. Pretty young on both sides too. And playing in the NFC, you should have some Super Bowl aspirations. You don't have to play the Chiefs until you actually get there. So wheels up for both teams. This should be an awesome game, just like we had last night.
Matt Keats, game is 45 minutes away, not like an hour and a half like they said. I was talking about Sunday. You could open your ear holes. Sunday, we're going to be doing an hour and a half show for Live Before Lock on Sunday. That will be 11:30 a.m. Eastern time until 1 p.m. of kickoffs. Can't wait for that one. But Matt and I back for a fourth year, covering that on Sundays. And with that, let's start breaking things down. We got producer Jacob Roach there behind the scenes, our Friday producer, the all-star producer, not a fill-in for Jordan Klein in any way, shape, or form. I want to get that out there right from the get-go. But we start in the quarterback side of things, and two pretty studly ones here. Jalen Hurts, who I believe in your projections from, I was using them the entire time as I was drafting best ball draft after best ball draft. You had Jalen Hurts as the number one fantasy profile quarterback. Now, this is a tough spot going up against a Green Bay front seven that I think we can all agree is studly. They have tons of talent on the defensive side in the secondary and up front, but this is also a very, very strong offensive line, headlined by Lane Johnson out on right tackle, Mailata, who's just continued to be a stud every single time out. How are we feeling about Jalen Hurts and his outlook for tonight?
I love Jalen Hurts. He's like Lamar Jackson in my mind, where in these single game formats, it's really just a question of where you want to play him, not if you want to play him. Now, if you're building 150 and using the sim tool, you're going to end up with lineups without him. But just for reference, when I ran it this morning, I had 99% Jalen Hurts spread across captain and flex. He is far and away the best play on the slate. And to ease some of the concerns people might have about him, I don't expect the QB sneak stuff to go away. It doesn't seem like anyone coming out of Philly expects that to go away. And they replaced their center. That's probably the biggest concern there. But Jurgens is the heir apparent. He's been behind Kelsey, and who better to learn from than the guy who mastered it himself and orchestrated it? Not to mention, I don't want to just leave Hurts out of the equation. It's a guy that squats like 700 pounds.
Yeah.
And now Saquon Barkley's behind him delivering the push, assuming he's back there. I don't think it's going away. That's number one concern. And then two, now you bring in an OC and Kellen Moore. Last year, Philly, towards the end of the season, was running motion, pre-snap changes, things like that at a league low rate, literally last in the league. They were like 14% motion in the NFL. Now you go to Kellen Moore, that should rise rapidly, which should just put Hurts in friendlier situations to deliver the ball to his pass catchers. So I think, honestly, you're looking at a better situation than last year. And last year, he was a no-brainer every time he was on the slate. And he's cheaper. He's not even the most expensive player on the slate, which is shocking to me.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to me as well. I mean, I very much look at the board for today, and I just see no way around it. I mean, I'm going to be playing 20 max stuff so that I can host this show and talk through a lot of the tools and content that we have here. And as we're sharing things with the Sims here, we're seeing some really high Sim ROIs for today's Showdown slate, and almost all of it. I mean, every single lineup I'm looking at, my top 150 right now, I'm going to group those together and then figure out where I want to go from there. Almost all of them, as I start to condense it down to a 20 max, is going to have Jalen Hurts in it. I'm going to have nearly 100% of him. I think he's the best play on the slate. I think he's such a sure thing because of what he does with his legs. And as you said before, people saying that Kelsey was the reason of the tush push. No, how about having a mobile quarterback that is now going to get pushed by another very, very good football player in Saquon Barkley? A little bit of an improvement over DeAndre Swift, I think, in that type formation, because Saquon Barkley, if anybody's seen that picture of him hitting a golf ball that one time, his legs are just bulging through his shorts. The guy is built #different. So I'm going to be just firing up Jalen Hurts, not thinking too much about it. But I do think what's interesting is how we're going to handle the quarterback on the other side. If you work through some of our data, Jordan Love, he's still the guy who's projected for the second most fantasy points. But A.J. Brown, I mean, there are so many ways that you want to bring him along for the ride on Hurts. I am such a stan for Devonta Smith this season. It's not even funny. I hope he gets the slot in a Kellen Moore offense. That's really, really what I'm hoping for here this time around. But I do think Jordan Love is somebody that you want to be stacking up with multiple pieces. But who those multiple pieces are on Green Bay is very much up for debate. How are you handling Jordan Love in your lineups?
This is one where I think you can differentiate a little bit depending on what you're playing. If it's a small field or a large field, I would take different approaches. So for smaller field stuff, with there being honestly, arguably 7 pass catchers that could be in play today for Green Bay, just taking Jordan Love is a way to encapsulate all of that. You don't have to worry about rolling the dice and picking the correct one. If you're playing larger field stuff, I certainly want him stacked, and I'll be largely spraying the board with a slight preference towards Jaden Reed and Christian Watson. But with Love specifically, you mentioned it, second highest projected player. I definitely want to play him, but it's just a matter of how you play him in the specific contest, in my opinion. How are you doing it?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult. I'm doing a couple of different filters because, again, the Sims tool, which you can use promo code kickoff, get it for $1 right now. If you want to play along at home, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we got 35 minutes before lock. That is plenty of time to filter out some of the best possible lineups. But like my top Sim ROI lineups, it's funny. I felt this way yesterday working through it. They're not necessarily the highest projected fantasy point ones. And, obviously, if you're spending up for Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts, I think is a priority no matter what kind of build I'm going for. I've got to bring at least 1-2 pass catchers along. Josh Jacobs, I do think can consist of as a pass catcher based on some of the news that we have earlier. We'll get to that at the running back position, of course. But Jordan Love, I'm basically filtering out some of the lineups where I'm playing him solo. I'm just getting rid of those. I'm unfavoriting those. I'm filtering some of the different stuff that I've got for that. But then I also just kind of am not playing him in the captain at all. And I find that to be a little bit surprising because it's a quarterback. He's pulling 12.6% captain ownership, which is it's tied for the second most along with Josh Jacobs. But I strongly prefer Josh Jacobs at 8,200 as my captain. And if it's going to be equal ownership, I just feel better about what we're getting out of him and what those lineups look like alongside him there, I'm just finding it hard for me to land on Jordan Love captain. And from a flex perspective, I do think that I am prioritizing a Jaden Reed in the captain. I'm prioritizing Christian Watson in the captain, who I think has just as much upside as any of these wide receivers if we see him on the field incessantly, which, is always a question mark with him, but he's stayed healthy. Everybody wants to bring it up since spring, and congratulations to him. We'll see how the hamstring handles Brazil here, but we are very much going to be nervous about Jordan Love shorting him in the captain slot if you're playing your lineups like me with the Sims tool.
Yeah, again, I have no problem with that. I think it largely comes down to what you want to play. And I'm not really taking any massive stance with Jordan Love either. I just checked. I'm about right in line with the field. I'm positively leveraged 1%. So not really taking any massive stance with Jordan Love, playing this even across the board. And we already mentioned the ways he gets there. To me, it's just how you play him. What does the rest of your lineup look like with him? He's, I think, trickier than Jalen Hurts, who has, in my opinion, more ways to win.
I definitely, Jalen Hurts just has so many ways of getting there and ways that you can construct those lineups. I think like Jalen Hurts, I'm not going to call him a free squared. There's no such thing for a guy who has a show called Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. Know that that's a little bit facetious. It's kind of meant as a joke and trying to be inspiring ire. And I am a alliteration whore. But anywho, we're going to go to the running back position where I think things get freaky naughty. And if you guys want to have the awkward Eric says things to Matt and try to stick a reaction card going, one, didn't get anything, but we'll get the laughs going. Running back, Marshawn Lloyd is inactive. I brought it up just a second ago. Josh Jacobs is somebody that I love for the captain. I'm a little worried that he gets steamed. But in our tools right now, if Jordan Love is going to ever so slightly be pulling more ownership than that of Josh Jacobs, I will take Josh Jacobs all day. Philadelphia, much more gettable through the air over the course of the tail end of last year, but I don't think they're going to be completely shut down there up front this time around either. I do like some of the pieces that we're looking at here on their defensive side relative to last season. I do think the improvement of Quentin Mitchell, getting him from Toledo in the first round was a definite must for them to cover Jaden Reed out of the slot. But when we're talking running game here, Carter, I mean, as special as Jalen Carter is from a pass rushing perspective, we didn't see him do a lot to stop the run last season. That's going to have to be something that also Josh Sweat improves on, where he was pretty poorly graded by PFF last year. It's basically Brandon Graham and these linebackers trying to do everything they can to slow down the running game. Do you think Josh Jacobs is as good of a play in the captain spot as what I do today?
Yes, but it's mainly volume. I do have concerns about the matchup. Philly's stout up front. In one way, I don't know how they did this offseason. This is stuff that you wouldn't know unless you're in the building. Jordan Davis is a guy that just could play more snaps. Now, he was maybe the biggest human being in the NFL, so I don't know that he can actually play more snaps. That would have to be a conditioning thing. And then, if he loses weight, does that actually negatively affect what he's on the field to do? But it's literally just matchup stuff because the volume is going to be there for Josh Jacobs. They literally don't have anybody else to give the ball to. We're talking UDFAs from like creative schools. Emmanuel Wilson, he's an FCS player. I don't know where he went. I don't watch a lot of FCS, but
I know where he went.
Grand Valley State or something? Or
yes.
Is that where he went? Okay. I remember when he came out of college, but I do know where Ellis Merriweather went to school. He went to UMass and he's another UDFA. I mean, if Green Bay wants to be competitive in this game, I don't think you can legitimately put those guys on the field for more than a snap here and there when Jacobs is just tired. It just doesn't make any sense. Those are not NFL caliber players.
They are far from NFL caliber players. I mean, Marshawn Lloyd being out, I bet he was going to get a very, very light workload as it is coming off of his own injury, his own hamstring there, I believe it was. And for today's purposes, I'm with you, but can we take some shots on some of these guys? Because, I mean, obviously, Emmanuel Wilson, he wasn't uninvolved even during the playoffs. I mean, he had 8 rushing attempts against Dallas. He had 4 against San Francisco in that competitive game. I thought Green Bay showed out pretty well, and obviously they're bringing back a lot of the same pieces. Not saying it's a one-for-one swap because Aaron Jones had his own limitations at times in Green Bay, just from an injury perspective. I know you and I are both stands for him, but Josh Jacobs is brought in to be a bell cow. I think he will be, but 3,600 for Emmanuel Wilson. Is he somebody who's still creeping into your lineups at all?
He's creeping into some, and I'm debating bringing him down for a couple of reasons. One, it's just the talent is really questionable. There's a chance you see a season high snap share from Josh Jacobs tonight just because of the available backs that Green Bay has. But we also have alternatives in this range that are going to be on the field, and on the field probably more than players typically are at this price point. Injuries not counting. Sometimes you get guys hurt in the week when showdowns are already priced. I'm talking about just standard showdowns. Tucker Kraft is 2,800. He's a player that is going to play tonight. Now, to outscore Emmanuel Wilson, what's that going to take? Because goal line work, that's Josh Jacobs. Pass game work, that's Josh Jacobs. What kind of carries is Emmanuel Wilson actually getting? To me, it's probably just these hollow between the 20s work when Josh Jacobs needs a breather. So if Tucker Kraft gets 2 targets, you get the PPR bonus on DraftKings specifically, you get the receiving yards. Like 1 or 2 catches legitimately might outscore what Emmanuel Wilson gives you. So to me, it's kind of just there being alternatives in this price range also helps. Even a guy like Bo Melton, who's much cheaper, when he played and had opportunities for Green Bay, he was excellent. We actually saw him play a little bit in the playoffs, which should tell you a little bit of what Green Bay thinks about this guy. People are kind of selling him short. I don't know what the role is going to be. It's probably going to be light, but even if it is, how many targets do you need from Bo Melton to outscore Emmanuel Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, Bo Melton, I mean, this rotation of him coming into the game, and obviously the guy that I shorted over on pick 6 today, and we'll talk about him, Dontavian Wicks, under 2.5 receptions, I'm a pretty big fan of. With 3 core guys in there, I don't know what the rotation looks like. I do know Josh Jacobs will be the bell cow type, but yeah, it's the price point that I have the biggest issue with on Emmanuel Wilson. We did see Bo Melton score against San Francisco. I remember that touchdown pretty vividly because I think you needed it for that showdown, which was pretty annoying. But anywho, I prefer very strongly to get up to Tucker Kraft if I'm going to take a shot on anything there in that range. Purely because I think there's ways that he ends up rotating in now that he's active. I know Musgrave was injured and out for like 7 weeks towards the tail end of last season, played the last 3 weeks, and it was still Kraft that made enough of a mark to stay out there and be on the field quite a bit come playoff time. And I'm valuing it and I'm referring to it purely because I think what we saw in those playoffs is pretty indicative of the way Green Bay feels about their specific skill players. And I think Dontavian Wicks, it's going to be hard for him to get on the field. It's going to be hard for Melton to get on the field. I think Kraft is going to be the guy, but again, he's $600 more than Wilson. And Wilson, I think he ends up being the guy who comes in for Josh Jacobs at times, but 85% snap share on the line here for Josh Jacobs in the first game right out of the gate. I mean, it sounds aggressive, but I think it's very much in play, Matt.
I think the only thing that would limit it, maybe a long run, an injury, or the game is not played to the spread.
Yeah. Those are going to be definitely some high variance outcomes that you want to be building towards. But anything else you want to bring up on the Green Bay side? Because now we have this Saquon Barkley character who I wrote down in our notes. He's good at football. Saquon Barkley, he's pretty good at football.
I see you and Laffy were sharing notes from this morning.
I did not see that. Did he say that?
He didn't say it word for word, but he might as well have said that.
Okay,
I don't disagree. I'm not trying to take the opposite stance on Saquon Barkley. He is very good.
Yeah, he's very, very good at football. But from a fantasy perspective, looking at the tools, looking at the content, and again, we're playing DFS. It's a little bit different than real life foosball, wretched game. But we got Saquon Barkley, 13,500 on FanDuel. I think he's pretty appealing over there, but I don't know what to do with him on DraftKings. I think he's probably the player I'm having the biggest problem with in my lineups as I work through it, because I mean, a lot of my favorite lineups with him are just Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and Jake Elliott. Like, it's such a question of like, what's going to happen in the goal line? Are they going to try to, just continue the tush-push progression? Are they going to continue having Jalen Hurts do that? Or are they going to hand it off to Saquon Barkley and try to lessen the workload or the risk of Jalen Hurts getting hurt right from the get-go? What is the game plan for Saquon Barkley with Philadelphia here? And Kellen Moore, he really did not check down to Austin Eckler as much last season, that's for sure, taking over play calling duties and coming in from Dallas. I don't know what to make of Saquon Barkley here. Help me out.
Part of it is price. You have the more secure workload with Josh Jacobs, and you save $1,000, a little bit more than that, by just paying down. So your lineups look a little stronger because you can use that money somewhere else and upgrade. especially with the very strong mid-range we have today. But Barkley, I think, still has a nice role. And if he's coming in where he is now, I do have a lot of interest. I'm not as concerned with a lot of the QB sneak stuff that a lot of people are. Laffy brought up this stat this morning. DeAndre Swift was still top 10 in the NFL in red zone carries. So yeah, if they get down to the 1 yard line, it's going to be an auto Hurts touchdown. But if it's at the 4, if it's at the 3, I think there's more of a question with those opportunities, and those are still very valuable for Saquon Barkley. And I also think he's among the best pass catching backs in the NFL. With Eckler last year coming off the week 2 ankle sprain, he was kind of just a shell of himself. I wish that he had maybe taken a short trip to injured reserve instead of playing through that the entire year. But assuming Barkley's healthy, which he should be, we have a nice pass catching role for him in this offense. I don't anticipate you see as much Kenny Gainwell as we have in years past. Will Shipley's still a rookie. This should be his pass catching role, which is going to be very healthy in this offense, I think.
Again, it's still 25 minutes before lock, and I still have no idea how I'm going to handle Saquon Barkley, but that was mainly the main guy that I wanted to ask you about, because I feel pretty good about my ownership with the wide receivers as I'm looking through my lineups right now, especially as I've condensed them down in the Sims tool. But let's talk about those 2 ancillary pieces before we talk pick six and we move to the pass catchers. How are you handling anything? Gainwell and Shipley. I'm playing 20 max stuff tonight, so I'm less concerned with the fact that I have 5%, so that's 1 lineup of Kenneth Gainwell, and I have 0% of Will Shipley, although Shipley, looking at NFL.com, the guy has absolutely ridiculous combine numbers, sub 4.40, 38.5 vert, like everything across the board for Will Shipley looks awesome out of Clemson, but my dear God, Saquon Barkley is being attained by Philadelphia for a reason here, and that is to be on the field ad nauseum. Kenneth Gainwell, I don't even know if I want to have 1 share of him here in 20 max, but if you were playing 150 or if you're just playing 1 lineup, how do we treat these ancillary pieces?
If you're playing 150, I could see getting upwards of 5%. I don't have any, and I don't plan on having any. If you're playing 1, you're definitely not playing these guys. It's not just a question of their role. It's just alternatives in their price ranges. We already mentioned most of them. A lot of them occupy the Green Bay territory, but there's also Dotson and Johnny Wilson if you want to throw him into the mix. We'll talk about those guys in a little bit, but I just don't see any reason to play them outside of large, the Millie Maker, and you're running 150. They're just not going to be on the field enough. And now with Will Shipley in the mix, what's Gainwell snapshot? Before you could kind of pencil Gainwell in for your 3rd and longs, your clear 2-minute hurry up type stuff. Shipley's an excellent pass catcher. I don't know if Gainwell even has that on lock anymore. So with the uncertainty there, I'm just going to take the certain, albeit a timeshare, but it is certain with Tucker Kraft and those players. And honestly, I'd rather play the Green Bay guys at running back.
Yeah, I think I would too if I had to do any of it, but I don't think I'm going to do any of it when it comes down to the end of it. In my top 150, I do have 1% Will Shipley. I'd try to maybe give that a little bit of a boost. As you said, the pass catching role could potentially be his. You don't know until you know. And again, once everybody knows that he's the 3rd down back or comes in and rotates and, Saquon Barkley only plays 60% of snaps, then we can have that conversation. It's probably going to be a little bit game script dependent too. So if you're hand building out some lineups and you want to make some educated stands with Will Shipley potentially being in a come from behind mode, but still Saquon Barkley, I would think, is still the guy that you want on the field in most of those circumstances. More than adequate pass catcher at Penn State and then infinity years with the Giants, but also pretty adequate free money whenever it shows up in your account or when you can get bonuses. Whenever you're able to get bonuses at sites, it's a huge deal, and that's what you get at Pick Six. That's why you want to be signing up at the link that producer Jacob will throw into chat or at the video description box below, because DraftKings Pick Six, we're talking DraftKings DFS, but Pick Six is a great addition if you have it in your state, and here's why. In less than 20 minutes, if you put $5 or more using promo code LP6, that is LP6, you have an opportunity to get yourself $50 in Pick Six credits just by playing that $5. 5 into 50, 10x return. That is ridiculous. That's how you're going to build and sustain a bankroll throughout this. They also have instant deposit matches up to $500 in Pick Six credits going as a bonus right now available if you have that in your state. They have boosts on your Friday winnings. There are so many ways that you can then use this prop exposure to also sustain you throughout this NFL season. If you have Odd Shopper, if you have the Stochastic sign up for promo code kickoff as well, you can get all of the pick six goodness and get some of the top plays, throw those in, and you're ready to rock. I personally love Devonta Smith more than 4.5 receptions. I love Dontavian Wicks less than 2.5 receptions. You put those two together, you're playing peer-to-peer. So it's just like the DFS that you know and love when we're discussing on this channel, but you're able to do it in the prop format. And that is so much better than playing up against any kind of a house format. So check out DraftKings Pick 6, my preferred way of getting prop exposure here at the moment. And I think you'll realize very quickly when you get some contrarian stands that end up coming to fruition, oh, it is a lot of fun to see those payouts come in. So check it out. DraftKings Pick 6, that is LP6, bet 5. Get yourself $50 in Pick 6 credits right now. Alrighty, my friends. We head to the pass catchers, and this is a loaded discussion because we have so many. And we've been starting on the Green Bay side with most things, and I think we should start on the Green Bay side yet again before we get to, two guys who have just been the targets in Philadelphia for the last couple of years. But I am looking specifically at this big three that we have with Green Bay: Christian Watson, Jayden Reed, Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs, currently looking at our projections, this is just kind of like an interesting hunch, but like 27.2% ownership coming for him, 3.9% captain percentage. I think he's the one I'm the most likely to land on in the flex because he's the most expensive, and I think the ownership's coming in lower. But I don't know how you don't love Christian Watson and the captain, because when you talk upside and you think about deep shots and you think about what that upside could be from 2 years ago when he stayed healthy, Christian Watson is like the definition of that. And this was a porous secondary for how many years now, and specifically last year where they were 31st against the pass. But how do we handle this? If you had to play one of these three, who are you prioritizing in your lineups, Matt Gajewski?
I have the most of Watson and Doubs, but I'd be lying if I told you I felt comfortable about this. But I agree with you on the matchup stuff. Philly's going to be relying on a lot of young players. During the preseason, they were doing, I'm like, I don't even know if they have it figured out because Cooper DeJean was hurt most of the preseason, so they couldn't really get looks with him. But they were using Quinyon Mitchell in the slot, and they would have him out wide, which isn't typically how they want to play defense. The slot's very important to this defense. I don't think they actually figured out maybe long-term who their slot is going to be. So what I'm trying to say is there should be openings for Green Bay, regardless if they have that position figured out or not. But on the field, I would project this number 1 in snaps, Romeo Doubs. 2 is where things get a little bit questionable for me. I could see it being Reed, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it's Watson. I think there's an outside chance that Wicks gets into that, but I would still rank him 4th in terms of snaps right now. They all have different roles, defined roles, so do expect rotation. Me and Luffy talked about this morning. I think all of them land somewhere between 45 and 75% of the snaps. Just not sure how those get parsed out. But one way you can create leverage is not only just using ownership, but use the projections. If you have a take that's different, this is the least certain we'll ever be about Green Bay's wide receiver core, assuming there's no injuries or anything like that. We just don't know. These guys rarely played together due to injury, and then a lot of them just asserted themselves late in the season. We don't know what it's going to look like, but in the preseason, the rotation was pretty gnarly, and it was snap to snap. It was not down to down. It wasn't drive to drive. And the other thing that's somewhat complicated is you have 2 tight ends that can actually get on the field at the same time together too. So right now, looking at my exposure, it's Watson and Doubs for me highest, but low level of confidence. Do you have a higher level than me?
No, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. And that's what leads me into the guy that I'm shorting the most on this slate. I'm doing it on pick 6, and I'm doing it here. I'm just taking Dontavian Wicks out. If he burns me today, but he is 5,400. We're talking about a guy who is $200 less than Christian Watson, who I expect to be on the field way more. We're talking about he's pretty darn close to Jayden Reed, 6,400. And we're talking Romeo Doubs, 6,800 relative to him. I think the big stand I have is just how do we see Dontavian Wicks on the field here? You work through all of last season, and when one of the guys were out, specifically Christian Watson, that was the only guy who was out for any noticeable amount of time. You had one game where Dontavian Wicks missed in week 12, but otherwise, if you had any of those core 3 in, you saw massive downgrades to Dontavian Wicks snap share. I don't know how the slot's going to play out. I don't know how they handle some of the defensive pieces, but I think Christian Watson is the guy that I want the most captain of because I've seen multiple times where he just has that game-breaking ability. So does Romeo Doubs. So does Jaden Reed. But I think the absolute pinnacle ceiling still exists with Christian Watson amongst the three. So I'm prioritizing him for captain. But then I'm just full fading Dontavian Wicks at this kind of ownership. If he's going to be double digits here and people feel like he's talented, and I think he's talented, don't get me wrong, but we saw the highest point with Christian Watson playing at least 40 snaps in a game last season at 44% snap share for Dontavian Wicks in week 10. So it's so hard for me to see anything for Dontavian Wicks where I would be prioritizing him at these kind of salary ranges. And the ownership isn't like non-existent on him whatsoever. So, hey, if he goes out and catches 3 balls for a touchdown, I apologize. But like, I just have to be full fading him and just investing in these other 3.
Part of what I'm doing is leaning on the tools because they take in projected ownership, which is very accurate even this early in the season. We put a lot of work into these tools.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sims tool, you can put in what kind of contest you're playing and then see if these players are over or undervalued, essentially. And Dontavian Wicks is a player that I did end up with less of, not because I don't like him. I think he's a very talented player, but it's a couple of factors. The price is close to the other players. Across all markets, he's under projected compared to those players. And the ownership's not that low. Like at a certain ownership level, we would probably be smashing the button on Dontavian Wicks. It's just not there yet.
Yep. 6% in my top 150, and then 0% he is going to show up in my top 20. So he won't be in a single lineup that I play tonight. Shorted him in the marketplace. Again, I think he's one of the best DraftKings Pick 6 plays that we have here. Let's round it out with the tight end position here at Green Bay. We've got 2 of them. We've got Musgrave. We've got Kraft. There are some ancillary pieces that we can play here at the bottom end of Green Bay that I don't think we should be completely omitting. Specifically, who is this Messiah Swinson character? Is he actually? He's not active today. No, it's Tucker Kraft. Those are the only 2: Musgrave, Kraft. And then we have Melton, of course, at 1,800. That was the guy that we had brought up earlier, too. But specifically these 2 tight ends, how are you handling them?
Trying to play them both. They're at different price points, so it's a somewhat different conversation than what we just had about the receivers. Honestly, you could probably lump Musgrave into those receivers because he's 4,600. He's right there in terms of price. But Tucker Kraft occupies a different conversation. When you talk about Tucker Kraft, you're really debating Emmanuel Wilson, Jahan Dotson, the other really cheap players on the slate. So I do have some more interest in Kraft, and it's, again, not because I don't like Luke Musgrave. I would project Luke Musgrave for more raw snaps. But Tucker Kraft gives you a different lineup look, and it's not really a one-for-one debate between the 2. I guess you could play them in the same lineup, but that would be, I would guess, extremely contrarian, and I would be shocked if it simmed well.
Yeah, I would be shocked if it did too, because it doesn't as I'm looking at my lineups. But I do, again, the price point is at least more appealing to go to the Musgrave and Kraft spot than it is for me to go to, for me to be going to Dontavian Wicks. So again, that's just the big stand that I'm choosing to make here today, and I'm happy to roll with it. Let's jump over to Philadelphia, where brought it up earlier. I'll bring it up again. Kellen Moore is now your offensive coordinator. And if you watched Keenan Allen's 100+ catches, 140+ targets last season, you have a pretty good idea of what we're going to be getting here. It's just a question of, does Jahan Dotson cut into what the potential snap share could be in the slot for Devonta Smith? And of course, you can't overlook A.J. Brown, who came out of the gates guns blazing last year and faded a little bit down the stretch. How are we handling these main 2 first? A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, who do you like more for your lineups?
It probably sounds like I haven't taken a single stand on this slate yet. Here's where it is. I'm underweight to both Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. Wow. And the player I have the least of compared to ownership is A.J. Brown, which is horrifying. And I've literally been debating this the entire show is, do I have too little A.J. Brown? Can he bury me? And he definitely can, yes, is the answer. But I have 13%. We're expecting him to push 40, 45 based on our most recent ownership. He's more expensive than Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love. So even if he does have an amazing game, you're not just stone dead because his price point is more expensive than anyone else on the slate. And it's not because I don't love A.J. Brown. I truly do, but it's just alternatives cheaper price points. And the ownership is not reflecting these factors. He's still being played like he's A.J. Brown cheaper than those other players. And that's just not the case. So, yeah, I mean, this is my big stand on the slate. I don't feel good about it. Anytime you're fading A.J. Brown, I think you should go into the slate with a little bit of fear.
Yeah, it should be a little bit fearful. I feel like A.J. Brown I'm always low on relative to the field because, there's so many of those games where he just comes out, puts up 10 and kills you. Obviously, we're worried about all range of outcomes when it comes to this. And for me, I very much want to be invested in the Devonta Smith side of things because we really have never seen him be like a target hog by any means. I think 4 times he had double-digit targets last season. He's been efficient to a certain extent and not crazy efficient even. We saw some drops towards the end of last season for him out of the middle of nowhere. But we're talking about one of the best route runners in football. And I don't know exactly what Jair Alexander is going to be doing roaming around the field. He might be a little bit more on Devonta Smith than I would like. And it could end up being Eric Stokes on the other side on A.J. Brown. But just matchup independent, I think Devonta Smith has such a pronounced upside. And as I'm building out with the Sims, which again, you guys can get promo code kickoff, $1 to be able to get everything for week 1, including Friday night. You still have 10 minutes. I was able to do another sim as we were working through this, update my Saquon Barkley exposure. So again, $1 for week 1 access. Sign up at the link below. Get yourself this $1 deal for the entire weekend for week 1 and get these tools so that you can update your lineups at the same time that Matt Gajewski is. But I'm with you where I think A.J. Brown I'm going to be short on. I'm the exact opposite on Devonta Smith, though. I'm just jamming him. Cool. So go me on that one. Nothing else to add. Jahan Dotson, 0% in my lineups. How do you feel about that one?
I'm pretty sure I have 0 too. So I feel good. Oh, never mind. I have 2%.
I have 0. And he's 3,200. If he gets the slot, I'm going to be so mad. And I'm assuming he's going to play a lot of slot when he's out there, but how much is he going to be out there? We don't know. We obviously just saw him getting traded. He's like a 2022 draft pick from Washington, and they already cut bait with him. That's never a good sign, I would say. And we've seen this happen where they've tried to find a wide receiver 3 in Philadelphia for a while, and it's never really happened. What I think ends up happening is Dallas Goedert probably gets a little bit more involved. The pride of South Dakota State, friends. He is very good at the catching of footballs when thrown upon, which didn't happen a whole hell of a lot last season, which to my chagrin, that's for sure. But Dallas Goedert, I think he's got to be more involved this time around. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think he's definitely more involved than Dotson, and he's at a different price point than those other studs. You have to make some concessions somewhere. So just like generally my approach today is playing the quarterbacks who project for more raw points than A.J. Brown at cheaper price points. The running backs on both sides, I think, have more secure workloads than any of the elite receivers. And then because Green Bay has somewhat of a logjam, you're kind of getting a discount on what might be a stud. So that's why I just end up with less A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. With that said, there's a robust mid-range. Dallas Goedert is also a part of this. I would include him with the Green Bay guys when you're making builds that look like this. He's the 3rd most secure pass catcher on the team, locked in every down tight end. He's going to be a distant 3rd behind A.J. Brown and behind Devonta Smith, but that doesn't really matter. It's accounted for in price. He's 5,800. He's essentially half the price of A.J. Brown on this slate. So I think he's the strongest play among the pass catchers when you adjust for price.
Anybody on the real cheap from either team that we should be looking at? We have Cachuera's down there hanging out. He's active today. You have E.J. Jenkins. He's active today. We've got a bunch of randos. Are we playing any randos down here? Because I'm not in love with it. If you wanted to fire up some Merriweather or something, go ahead at 300 in the captain, 200 in the flex. But like anybody down here on the cheap that you want to be getting to for value?
What did you call Calcaterra?
Cachuera. I thought that's how you say it.
Is that how you say it?
I think it's Cachuera. I think that's how you say it. I had a friend that was from Iowa State that, it had a name that looked pretty similar to that. And I think it was Cachuera is how you say it. But
I mean, I'm famous for mispronouncing names. So don't quote me on names. I was just curious. Like, is that how you actually say it? Anyway,
I think that's how you say it. Cachuera.
Not to get off on a tangent. Maybe someone in the comments knows him or his family and can correct us.
Everybody's mad that this game is on Peacock, and I just find it funny. Oh, shoot. I have some super chats. We've got 5 minutes. I'm going to throw these in. Chris Williams, glad you're back, Matt. And an elephant never forgets you still owe the Loco Chug. He's a smart guy. He knows, and he gave out 5 subs because he's the absolute GOAT. Brandon Wagner. I don't know. I just said Wagner there because now I'm reading absurd names and saying absurd things. But Brandon Wagner, $5. Pick 6. I have 3 lineups, and they all have Musgrove over 25.5 yards. I feel good about that. Yeah. How do we feel about Musgrove 25.5 yards? What do you have him projected for tonight, Matt?
I would have to double check on the back and I have that close with it being so close to lock, but
Cool.
Off the top of my head, it should be higher than that from what I remember. I like that. I like that prop though.
And then he is member for 41 months. Good luck, ladies and gents, on the season. Thank you. Thank you very much. We got over 1K people hanging out here. Smash the like button as we round out the show with defense and kickers. They are very, very important for Showdown. I have quit trying to analyze individual lineups and saying this defense can't go with them because really it comes down to cumulative ownership and having uniqueness and avoiding some of these duplications. There are so many ways that the Sims tool is smarter than me. And so I let the Sims tool do its thing. And I land on 19% Eagles defense in my top 150. And I land on 24% Packers defense. That's a little surprising in my top 150. Condense it down. I've got 20 and 25% of them respectively in my 20 max. I feel good about that. How are you handling the defenses tonight, Matt?
I didn't get as much defense, but I did get a fair amount of kicker. And I think that's just because you have some uncertainty with the pass catchers that are just a little bit more expensive. So it changes your build a little bit. They do have certainty, and they're not going to be his own because of the dearth of options that we have in that mid price.
And kickers tonight. Again, kickers matter big time. They were very important to Showdown last year. Holy crap. We got a new one, Braden Narvison. He's going to be kicking footballs for the Green Bay Packers this time around. We obviously need to discuss him. We need to discuss Jake Elliott, who's been consistent as gravity, 31 for 33 last season. Pretty darn good percentage. And he made a couple of bombs, I remember, at very important times throughout. A pretty darn good kicker, but we know Philadelphia, they like to go for it in those 4th and short type situations. It's not going to change anything that I'm really doing. I'm getting right around 30% of both of these guys, so a little bit more than the field. How are you handling kicker?
It's the same with me. If you made me pick one, I would prefer Elliott, just he's the known commodity versus the guy who played for Western Kentucky last year. I don't know.
Makes me think of Sebastian Janikowski, who came from, wasn't he some obscure school at Kentucky or something? No, he went to Florida State. That's right.
He's before my time.
Yeah, he was big.
All I know is, wasn't he a first round draft pick? Or
He
something
sure
like
was.
a high
Or
draft
second
pick?
round. Yeah, it was absurd.
Egregiously
And
high.
egregiously high, and I think he had some kicking issues. And then what was the team? I think it was Tampa Bay that drafted the one kid who had like no misses in college, and then all he did was miss, and they had to cut him the next year, and it was like a first or second rounder.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but I remember him vividly. That was very sad. I feel bad for guys that fail that badly, like
Yeah,
DJ Uiagalelei.
Oh, yeah, that's a swear word now in Tuscaloosa. Well, is it Tuscaloosa? Is that where Florida State is? Nope, that's where Florida is, right? No, Gainesville is Florida.
Yeah, you were right the
Tuscaloosa.
first time.
Yeah, I always have to correct myself. But hey, I'm getting back in the rhythm. Feel the rhythm, feel the ride. We got 1 minute. Make sure your damn lineups are in, friends, and make sure you guys use promo code KICKOFF before the King Slate Sunday, week 1. It is here. So many milli makers, so little time, friends. And, $1, that's a lot less than $1 million. But the tools, the content, the stuff that Matt Gajewski over there helped curate this entire offseason in his cabin in Wisconsin, where we gave him ample supply of glizzies and opportunity to just grind tape for hours and hours. That can all be yours. Promo code KICKOFF. It's at the link below. Get the data and tools. Get the Sims tool, and especially the single lineup generator that for 90-minute show coming up on Sunday, Matt and I are going to be breaking down all of our single entry lineups in depth. I can't wait for that. If you can't either, sign up with that deal. Thank you, producer Jacob. Thank you, Matt Gajewski. Follow him at Matt_Gajewski. Buddy, we're back live. We stuck the landing here. Any final words for the people as we get out of here?
Just good luck to everybody. Hope you enjoyed the game tonight. And it's a long season, but we're here to help you. If you have anything that you'd like to ask, my DMs are open. Feel free to shoot me one.
Remember to cancel your Peacock subscription after the game. Don't forget. Otherwise, you have to have Peacock for the next 4 months, which I guess might be important around Thanksgiving or Christmas. I'm sure we're going to have more games on Peacock because that's how things work. But just saying. A good thing to keep in mind. Thank you to Pick 6 as well. LP6, we are officially at lock. Awesome to see all of the fresh faces here yet again. We'll be here on Sunday for Live Before Lock Marathon Show. Hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the like button as we get out of here. Jacob, let's go to the freaking weekend. Have a good one, everybody. Best of luck with Green Bay and Philly tonight.